This is a conversation between James and Jonny, two university students based in the UK. This podcast has the aim to reveal the truth and to explore the concepts and mechanisms and systems that are prevalent in our life today. The topics we try to cover are economics, history, politics, psychology, and everything in between. We hope that this serves as a good groundwork for future podcasts and will delve more into specific subjects in the future. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
In my opinion, university relationships just aren't it doesn't actually foster anything meaningful and worthwhile, because the entire culture is based around basically going out and shagging and getting drunk, and it just fosters basically hedonistic immediate pleasure behaviour, like I've talked with you about before, and that leaves you just empty and corrupted basically. It doesn't actually create anything of higher value in any sense.
Yeah, then there's also definitely a reasonable argument that is something you've got to sort of get out of your system before you can progress in life. I know there's I can't remember the name now, but there was some sort of a guru, yogi philosopher, and he said young men would approach him and ask him to teach him,
Sadhguru.
Sorry?
Sadhguru.
I'm not sure.
The old dude who he I don't know. I'll get a photo up of him.
I don't know. I don't even know this picture, but basically it was a guy, and young men would come to him and ask him for teaching, and he'd basically say to all young men, "Now go away. You're not ready to learn yet. You need to go away. You need to expel these demons from your from your consciousness. You need to make mistakes, live and learn. You need to get out of your system, otherwise it will come back to bite you and fall straight from the path later in life."
I think it's suffering. That's what it is, because when you suffer, then you realise that something isn't good for you and for the general human psyche, or a good thing to live by. Because if you don't have a first-hand experience of something, then you can't really know what it's like.
You can always be told by someone to avoid something.
Yeah, but that's what I feel that's university. I think protracts people's adolescence, because you're basically being told what to do and what to think all the time.
Prolongs it.
Yeah, because you're not actually you're not out in the world actually fending for yourself, getting shit done, taking action. You're not actually fully autonomous and responsible for your own outcomes. Whereas
that's why most people go to university, isn't it? It's because you basically have to face reality for longer.
Yeah.
And you see that even when people leave university now in our society, we have a sort of culture where people live this sort of playboy lifestyle and this mentality well into their 30s. And if you think in the past, people would have been much more mature, much more developed in their life by the time mid-20s.
Yeah. A lot of people it was the standard to get married in your mid or to late 20s, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Or even earlier, if we're talking longer ago than that, maybe 100 years ago or more. Early 20s is when you would kind of get together and get married, because of the predominant Christian
values,
culture. Yeah.
So the thing is with university is it can be a almost necessary experience for some people. Others don't need to do it, but some people we see are very immature prior. Actually, what am I saying? It's a load of shit, isn't it?
No, I think you're right. I think there's a certain number of people. Okay, so say for example you're someone who, as you were growing up, your parents didn't expose you to situations that you were uncomfortable with. So say you're someone who didn't have any social institutions, and that's actually an issue we have nowadays. They're being eroded, but say you grew up and you didn't, go to a football team, or you didn't go play scouts, or you didn't put yourself in situations where you're kind of at risk or in danger, and you have to figure out a way through it. going to a controlled environment like university where you're safe, but you can also explore new territory and try new things, and also like put yourself in more uncomfortable situations socially, physically, sport-wise, intellectually, all of this stuff. Although arguably it's not very intellectually challenging.
Not anymore, no.
In a lot of universities, but that's not a bad thing, because it enables, like you're saying, it enables you to mature, enables you to have those experiences where you kind of develop as a person.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you touched on there is about the idea, you know, they say like privileged people grow up, you know, as a typical sort of archetype where it's like a man grows up sort of poor but then makes a fortune for himself and becomes successful when he has children, but then the children squander that wealth and don't make the most of the opportunity. It's almost because if you don't have adversity in life growing up, you almost like force yourself into situations which are hard because you need that test of your character. So I mean that can be anything from like drug addictions to like, you know, just generally sort of making what most people would consider poor life choices. You see it a lot, like.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. So, first of all, if you have nothing to run away from or come from, like there's no upward mobility for you, like there's nothing you are working towards.
There's nothing chasing you,
exactly.
to make you run away from.
And therefore, the fear of the beast, of like the evil side, the devil in man or woman or whoever you are, isn't there to like prod you up the arse and like get you.
I think that's what I lack, you know, in life. I think I do.
Someone to like, you know, grab hold of you and say like, stop pissing around. Like
it needs to be internal though, to a large extent. Like people need that inner.
Yeah, but I think also it comes externally first. For example, in my life, like I've had times where I feel, you know, dejected and hopeless and lost, and then, you know, you have, and this is the maternal and paternal roles. Like my mum has like been there, like emotionally and spiritually, like fulfilling that, and then my dad says to me, right, stop like pissing around now, get up and like look after yourself, like, you know, sort it out, stop feeling sorry for yourself and make it worth it. Like, and that you need those. It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, obviously that goes into a whole other, you know, how damaging like single parenthood can be nowadays, and like, you know, like the sort of adversity that people face in life, just, you know, for no fault of their own, just like based on the way they grow up. And when you look at sort of human psychology and like people's behaviour when they're adults, like it's so closely like interlinked with like their childhood, how stuff like that, and it's like does make you think like it's almost like a disadvantage from day one if you grew up in a less than ideal situation.
The other thing is, there's so many things coming to my mind right now, is so you're born a wealthy child and you grow up, you might face mistakes, you might do things that in other people's situations would cause adversity and harm to them. But in your situation, because you have material wealth, all these things, it almost protects you from that. It's like, it's a blessing and a curse. And I guess it really depends what you value in life. You know, there's people who are like, you know, gypsies in certain other communities who own literally nothing, and they don't value material wealth whatsoever. And you know, that I think there's plenty of, you know, very happy gypsies with how their life is, and they enjoy it, you know, perfectly well. But I think that material wealth, if you value that, then it enables you to make mistakes without having to see the consequences of your actions.
Precisely, yeah.
Which is exactly, you want to see the consequences of your actions, otherwise how do you know it's a good choice? And in regards to adults' actions being affected by their childhood trauma, I think that is something that everybody should be taught, because you don't even, how are you supposed to live a functional life if you don't understand yourself?
Exactly, yeah.
Otherwise, you're just like a. You're just kind of like a.
You're a victim of circumstance.
Yeah, you're just like a bottle floating on the ocean, like going wherever
Yeah.
the waves take you, like rather than like a an anchor that's like grounded you in the sea, like and the storm's going by and you can see everything as it's going. Like
if you have no point of reference, like no self-reflection, no understanding, then it's like no wonder people act in such a debased sort of manner. Like.
I think that's also what's happening with the political scene. So basically what's happening is people are saying, oh, you can do whatever you want no matter what it is.
And it's got to be accepted and tolerated.
Yeah. But there's no rules to that game, and where does it end? And there's been many examples of where people abuse that and do like horrible things in the name of this kind of, it's accepted.
Right now we're living in a timeline where basically we're becoming more and more tolerant, more and more accepting, and it's sort of like yes to everything, yes, and it's almost that fear of having like that authority and that hard
order.
conversation where people say actually no, like this isn't happening now, this is too far, and it's a lesson that repeats itself throughout history, throughout life, where it's going to be pushed too far and then there's going to be a rude awakening in society where things come crashing down around us.
I think you've already seen that to a certain extent. I mean, if you look at some of the events like the truckers' protest and some of the protests that have happened with various liberal organisations, when you actually look at what happened, for example, in Canada, when these peaceful protesters, were trying to protest the vaccine mandates, which they have a right to peacefully because that's what they're doing. They're the lifeblood of Canada. They're like delivering like goods and services, goods and commodities all over Canada, and then Trudeau sets the police out on them, calls them all far right Nazis, and then during one of the protests there was an Indigenous woman who was like in a wheelchair or something, and they sent like the police out on their horses and they like trampled this woman. Like in fact I don't think that's wrong. She wasn't in a wheelchair, she had a buggy. She had like a child buggy, I think. And it's literally like his whole agenda is that he like caters for all like races, ethnicities, blah blah blah, but his tyranny is actually like not benefiting the people that he claims to be for, and the Canadian people.
Until they have a wrong opinion and then it's not accepted so much.
Exactly, but that's the thing. Like, it's a really weird psychological phenomenon. Like, through saying that everything is okay, nothing is okay except what you say. Yeah, it's very strange.
I know it's very interesting because it also exposes, in this world of sort of like tolerance and acceptance, it also exposes in-group preference to a massive extent. Because
what's that?
Sort of in-group preference is exposed. Well, the idea that we have a preference for people like us,
right,
over the sort of concepts of morality and right or wrong. So it's the idea that like fundamentally you will take the side of and show preference towards somebody you're like physically like in terms of, be that like race or like political ideology, irrespective of the individual scenario and the judgment that could be cast on that individual event.
Do you think that has a relation with lack of self-awareness and self-reflection?
Yeah, definitely. I think people anticipate that they're so much better than they are. Like most people, on average, most general normie sort of individuals believe they're far more righteous and holy than they actually are as a person. It takes some serious self-reflection to be able to admit that you're a bit of an arsehole sometimes, and like in all circumstances you're not the good guy.
I think that's a bit of a utopian view. Like, I think everybody is flawed.
Precisely.
I think everybody is flawed. I think everybody is beautiful, amazing, like divine, creators of existence, but they're also massively flawed. If you talk to them, most people you talk to, they'll have done something pretty horrible in their lives, or they'll have some kind of traumatic event.
That's what I'm getting at, though. This is the absolute paradox of this whole political landscape we live in, because it's so accepting, it's so tolerating, it's so tolerant,
it's not.
But it's not, because people were so cancel culture, and people were so afraid to, people think they're so much better than they are. Like these people will happily project onto others and cancel others and hate them and say all these things, but then they're guilty of the exact same crimes. It's just it's just the way that it's framed, basically. Like,
I mean, it's in my opinion, and from what I've seen, it's a way to control people. Because if, for example, I don't know if people listening to this, or James, have you been watching the Jonny Depp Amber Heard trial a bit?
Yeah, I've been following it loosely.
She is so clearly, and this isn't a men-woman argument or whatever, it's a domestic violence liar.
It's a manipulator and a sort of victim.
She's been provably, she has lied on the stand.
Yeah.
So many times, more than 20 times.
Yeah. And
they proved it in court on live stream on YouTube, and yet people of a certain ideology are still pushing this idea that Amber Heard is being strong-armed by a man with influence and money in Hollywood.
This is exactly why
she's been proved that she abused him.
Yeah.
They had a bit of a turbulent relationship. He said some mean things, blah, 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 but he never physically abused her. And she wants everybody else to believe what she's saying over 10 other testimonies.
Yeah.
And this is what it does. It allows people to control this ideology, allows them to control you, because if you're a good person, you'll agree with me. If you're not, then you'll.
Yeah, no, thank you for that example, because that's precisely what I was trying to get at when I say about in-group preference, because, different groups will see this as you get the feminists and stuff who will be defending Amber Heard irrespective of evidence based on this individual case. And then, say it was the other way around, you'll get men's right activists who are, irrefutably defending Jonny Depp, even though in this individual scenario. But it just shows that, people are more biased towards defending their own than they are about making an accurate judgment on the scenario at hand.
I think it's human nature.
Precisely, yeah.
I don't think that's something we can eradicate like that.
Oh no, I never would want to. It's the way we are, but it's just exposing that and accepting it. People don't want.
Well, I think that's the main thing. It's acceptance. I may not agree with you, but I'm more than willing to listen to you, and I know I'm going to learn something from you, because every interaction you have with someone is an opportunity to learn and grow, and that's the difference. That's the difference between having an ideology that's okay, the world is wrong and I'm right, rather than saying, I know everybody is right about some things, I know everybody's wrong about some things, I know everybody's flawed, I know everyone has good things about them. Let's figure out a way through this together. Let's hash it out. Let's get to the truth, because the truth is what matters.
Yeah.
The truth of and this is what engineering is engineering and maths. You want to bring it down to first principles. That's the whole idea, is that you mess around with as much maths as you possibly can, and you get down to the bottom of it, and you have a singular constant or a set of variables that are the same value and have the same weighting no matter what the equation is.
Yeah. And
then you can build other things on that. That's what truth is.
Yeah, you're cutting down to the very core of it.
Yeah.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So
I'm proud of that one. That felt good, actually.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your engineering degree that you've just handed in today.
Yeah. I can actually link this into you were talking about education and prolonging, kind of going out into the real world. So I finished today. Congratulations to me.
Well done.
Finished at handed in 2 minutes before the deadline. I barely slept the past 2 days because I've been doing that and going out and partying too much. But I felt disillusioned with university because of the exact things we've been talking about. Like, it shelters you from the reality of life, and I think that it's really hard to build meaningful relationships in an environment like this. We're in a university building right now. It's really hard to build deep, meaningful relationships because there's so much like expedient fun to be had.
Yeah.
Like, you can go out, get drunk, like this, you know, you go out, like try and like find a partner, you know, have a sexual partner, like someone to spend time with, and like all this stuff, like, but you don't actually. There's such an abundance of sexual availability, like hookup culture, that it doesn't foster healthy, nurturing relationships, really. Yeah. Although you can probably talk a bit more about this. Like, you have had I don't know if you want to go into it or not, but
no, let's not necessarily talk about specific examples. But I was going to say, building on that point, is like university, sort of adolescence in general, is sort of a time where lots of unfinished, unpolished individuals, but essentially sort of like collide and like bump into each other in life, and basically like sharpen their steel on other people. You know,
I don't think you're ever finished.
No, but people were so raw and sort of like so emotional and so like energetically charged at this sort of age that it's like, you know, yeah, a meaningful relationship isn't really what anyone's looking for. We're looking to discover ourselves through other people, in a sense, you know, like.
Yeah. I think that's the reality of being human. Like, it's all, you're the center of your existence and your reality and your universe. And when you come across someone, you know, special, you take a bit of them and apply it to you, I think.
Yeah.
It's synonymous with the idea that you are actually what you experience. You're not actually you. You are like what you experience.
You're the conscious observer of your thoughts. Like.
Yeah, but even if you're not, you are what you experience. Because I haven't actually thought about this before. Let's explore this. So, when you were talking about when you're a child, if you have traumatic experiences, say you have an abusive, I don't know, parent, right?
Yeah.
You're more likely to be abusive when you're older, right?
Yeah.
Because you have that relationship. Because that experience, because your reality is that experience, is that the reason you're more likely, I don't know what I'm trying to get at here, but is that the reason you're more likely to do it in the future? Rather than like a, I don't know.
I'm going to take your point and twist it sideways, and I'm going to say that my perspective on trauma is essentially when you are wronged or you are violated in a way where you can't immediately take revenge or defend yourself, stand up for yourself, that is then energetically attached to you as what we know as trauma.
Yes, you're right.
So that's why childhood trauma is the most common kind, because children are the defenseless and sometimes, unfortunately, you know, sort of prisoners to their parents. Like, you really have to endure a lot, and you just
sometimes literally.
Yeah, you have to hope that you are protected and nurtured, which is what, you know, obviously an ideal setup looks like. And it's the same, you know. It's like if someone, you know, insults you or says something disrespectful to you, and then like later on that day, you know, as much as you want to deny it, it's constantly on your mind, and you're thinking of 101 different things you should have said, and it's that energy is so visceral with you for the time after that. But if in that moment when someone disrespects you, if you stand up for yourself and you say exactly what you should say in that moment, you feel so much better about yourself because that energy isn't attached to you. And that trauma is just density of emotion. It's a density of energy which gets placed on you.
You know what? Earlier today, I met someone who I hadn't seen in a while. I saw her recently when I was out in the town, and I think you were with me actually. I won't name any names, but I saw her earlier today, and I just felt a kind of animosity and angst and pain coming from this woman, and I just thought, I really don't want to get involved with that because I know you're just trying to make me feel bad, and I didn't actually stand up for myself to the extent that I think I should have. As I said, like, I don't want to be involved with you if you're going to be acting like this. I think this also speaks to truth, and philosophy and life in general, because the most important thing you can ever do is to speak your truth. To speak truth to the degree you can do so to the best of your ability. Otherwise, you corrupt yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're lying. Yeah.
I know I do it as well.
Yeah. I think it's
a very interesting point though. Yeah. Like, if you imagine, let's take a hypothetical scenario which would never exist because everyone's flawed, but if we had somebody who was incapable of lying and told the truth constantly and always did exactly what we wanted to, what would that person look like? I think they'd probably look like potentially the most happy and most enlightened person, because emotional density and stuff comes with taking on that emotion, taking on that energy, taking on that sort of psychological debt every time that you're wronged. It's a very interesting point. I think
that's an interesting idea. I think psychological debt, I like that idea.
I think, but then this is a thing though which we're not educated on. Our education on emotion is so poor.
Yeah.
If there's two ways to sort of negate that, to get rid of this baggage, and one is, unfortunately, it's revenge. People repeat the same cycles of abuse and take that out on other people and deploy that emotional trauma onto others as a way of trying to relieve their own pain. Or it's to grieve, and it's to cry, and it's to show remorse, and it's to really have that expelling of emotion, which is so shunned and so like that genuine expression of emotion, which has been so twisted nowadays and so stigmatized.
This is this links back into what we were saying. Your reality is like what you see, and your experience is your reality. Like if you're abusing someone, the majority of people, barring people with psychological disorders and psychiatric disorders and other things, you're abusing someone.
Yeah.
So that it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Like if you've had childhood trauma and you've been abused, and then you go into an adult and you're abusing someone, and I'm not like judging anyone for this because we're all fallible and we have our own issues, and we all make blunders and fuck ups and massive mistakes. I know I have done, and I know everybody has, even though they may not admit it. But that actually hurts you more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Because you're now seeing yourself as the abuser, as the person who abused you.
Yeah, precisely.
And I think the only way is to grieve. The only way is to
have therapy is such a key part of that.
Be vulnerable. Yeah.
Which is why I'd love to get into therapy. I'd love to do it. I'd love to become a therapist. I think that is an aspiration of mine. I think it's such a powerful tool. I've never done it myself, but I think everyone could benefit from therapy. Everybody could.
Yeah.
There's nobody who could like really sit there and say that, oh yeah, I'm a psychologically well-rounded, like 100% whole individual, because it just doesn't exist,
Yeah, I think it's another duality, right? Like the more vulnerable you are, the stronger you actually are, because you test out your insecurities and your shortcomings in a real life environment, and then you come away knowing more about yourself and knowing that you survived, and you think, oh, okay, I could actually do that now.
Yeah.
So it's and that's the story of life and death, story of birth, and all of this, everything has duality to it. I've realised.
You're right. Because a lot of what stops people doing stuff and affects everybody is like self-limiting beliefs. so we're capable of so much more than we personally believe we are.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is true. But sometimes it takes you to go through stuff, go through pain, go through suffering, to then understand these self-limiting beliefs, understand what your limits aren't, what you originally perceived them to be.
I actually think I've thought about this recently. I actually think desperation is quite a good tool for certain things.
Desperation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's because I'm not sure about this. I'm just exploring this. I could be, might change my mind on this, as I always do. Conversations are fluid, and my mind is never, iron cast on any one idea. But desperation comes from a place of hope when you're in deep hopelessness and suffering.
Yeah.
And it what's the word? It adheres. It kind of appeals to your greater self, because it's the idea that you are better than what you are now, and you should be, and you feel like you're not where you should be,
and you have to,
and
be,
therefore and therefore you're desperate to get something, or but on the flip side, it can be used in a negative term instead, in the sense of profligacy and I don't know, it could be sexual, like drugs or like alcohol or any of this sort of stuff.
I think there might be there's a spectrum to be had there, and it links back to what you said at the beginning when you said about you need something to run away from and something to chase, and desperation can be anywhere in that spectrum, right? So a negative aspect of desperation could be when you're more fearful of what you're running away from, but then desperation in a good sense, what you're saying is when you're more towards the end of being hopeful of something you're chasing, so desperation,
so it's like a cycle.
It's on a spectrum. There's like two ends to it.
So you start at the deep end. I think that's generally how things go, though, isn't it? Like you get a new job, you go to a new place, it's really hard, you don't know anyone, you start a new activity, you're really bad, and it's really hard at first,
and
but
you're running away from the vulnerability and the uncomfortable feelings,
right, to feel like you belong.
But then after a while you're chasing down what you know is possible, you're chasing down that.
Well, the thing is, when you don't have that hunger and that desperation, you're lost.
Stagnant.
So I guess the question is, how do you minimize your aimlessness without losing the ability to feel lost, so that you don't lose the hunger? And because if you don't have anything, if you're always on this course, in fact, no, I haven't thought this through well enough. If you're always on a plan and always on a course,
concepts.
That is possible. I mean, in the past I thought that wasn't possible, because this idea I have of cycles of birth and rebirth and life and death, like you have to let things die before things regrow. But what if you had a master plan overarching everything else, so that no matter where you are on that plan, it caters for whatever happens, and you're going to be okay, rather than just feeling lost. I've enjoyed this conversation. It's nice doing it in a proper format, because you actually get deeper into something.
Let's get into a different setting as well, isn't it? Because I think, well, we're indoors now, but Nietzsche said never trust a thought made indoors, right? So it's this concept of when you're sitting inside your four walls and your regular space, the thoughts you have are reoccurring and sort of the same and stagnant, because your input and your stimulus is always the same. So when you get outside, obviously what you're saying there is outside is a stimulating environment, and it stimulates new, better thoughts. But we're indoors now, we're in a different environment. I think that facilitates more conversation. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? And we're talking about your reality that defines who you are. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I've had this sort of phenomena occur to me actually. So I'll have certain thoughts when I'm here, and then I'll go home, and I'll sort of maybe walk for dogs on a certain route, and I find myself having these same thoughts which I've had years ago, and without then you become the conscious observer of that, and you think, hang on, what's going on here? I'm it's like deja vu almost, but because your body and your mind is getting into that cycle.
Yeah.
So it's so important to like refresh and like put yourself out, go to a different area, change it up, and new thoughts occur. You know, like
this is why I believe in like a higher power, or kind of God, or like there's an energy field or thing that's below the level that we can understand, because it's all a rhythm. Like, for example, we were talking about this. You go to certain places and you have the same thoughts. That is a rhythmic event, because it's the same place. And you go back to the same place and you have the same thoughts, and
rhythms of life.
Some kind of force or energy or whatever causes you to think of a certain thing, even if you don't consciously choose to think that.
And it's probably why people associate, like, you know, you obviously hear this sort of intellectualization of these concepts where people say certain buildings have an energy, or like certain areas have a different energy, and it's like it's all to do with like the.
I don't know. I mean, this is pretty. It's pretty intense. But do you think? Well, for example, right, when you go to Auschwitz and places like that, right, and you like walk around and you like, do you think it's the fact that there's like exhibitions and you know what happened there that makes you so upset, or do you think it's, you know, there's something that people can pick up on, that there's been so much death there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like maybe it's you know, the sort of concept of haunting. Like there's so much death and misery in this one area. But then it's also a toss up, isn't it? Because it could also be to do with like a cultural program.
Yeah, exactly. And like the information you download from like human interaction and work and that sort of thing.
It's infamous. Yeah, that's a good word, isn't it?
Yeah, infamous. Yeah. Very infamous. Yeah, not a good time. Yeah, I don't know. I think that speaks to a bit of the spiritual element. Like, there's concepts of, you know, haunting and rhythm, that certain places have this kind of
energetical baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, that.
But like, you know, we were talking about. This is the same with people, because, you know, we're talking about, so you have a psychological deficit, or like a negative deficit, right? So something bad happens to you. Sorry.
Yeah, but places could also occur the same sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I was going to link it as well. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. Like, energies can be held in areas. But I certainly believe this. You know, like, I won't, you know, there's no sort of specifics, but like, I believe in there's certain areas and certain places which hold different occurrences happen in different areas. You know, like, I've had certain experiences which do make me want to believe in sort of this esoteric concepts.
What does that mean?
Well, I've had experiences where I want to believe, where I believe in like energies and stuff like that. Like
me too.
Yeah, and I, you know, obviously you get the ironic guys and the sort of science atheists who will say like, you know, oh, it's a coincidence and this and that and stuff, and, you know, want to prove it all wrong. But sometimes when you experience things in life, you realise that everything seems too beautiful to be a coincidence. You know, like that's how I perceive life. Yeah, everything's too perfect to be a coincidence and an accident. You know,
I think it's. I think you're right, because the nature of life is that, and the world and everything is that it just is.
Yeah. Like,
it's not waiting to be something, it just is. We make all this stuff up in our heads, like, we just are what we are now. And so, when you talk about people not believing in kind of energies or whatever, that is, like, objectively, that is what we are. Like, we are just things, like, floating around.
I just don't understand people who aren't willing to even explore this, or even, you know, entertain the idea, because
I think it's born out of ego. I think it's born out of wanting to have control and think that they're, like, better than everything around them. I think, or
when you sit back and actually just like fully acknowledge the moment you're in now, what even is this lived experience? What's happening right now? Like, what is this? Then you've got to realise miracles are true, right? Obviously.
I think maybe it's something to do with the fact that when you start living outside of the present, you have expectations, and then things happen that you don't expect or want to happen.
And that, yeah.
Rather than if you live in the present, there are no expectations. Like, you just being is what it is, and then something amazing happens to you or someone you know or something like that, and you just feel amazing because you're
Why
in.
not? Yeah.
That's what like presence is like.
And
it's like a transfer of energy from this thing that happened to you or someone else, and it energizes you as well, like brings you up.
Yeah, I like that.
Rather than like thinking, oh, I wish that had happened to me or is going to happen to me or something like that, or like thinking, oh, why hasn't my life been like that, or I want my life to be like that, and then feeling like you haven't achieved enough. Like, it's all about being like present in the moment, and then you can actually appreciate things for what they are.
Life is quite bizarre.
Yeah. It's a very strange experience.
Why is there something and not just nothing? See, that gives me faith that there's something more than just sort of a happy accident of a big bang or a coincidence. Why is there anything? Like, if the world's a coincidence and completely logical and scientifically based, then why is there anything? Why is it just not nothing? Why isn't the entire experience like... Because this is another concept, that it's so hard to think of as a human, but they say like, oh, what happens once you die? But then you think about what happened before you were born. You hear about like history and stuff and like time, the years before you were born. But like, think about what was that experience like for you?
Yeah.
You got no concept of it.
Yeah.
That just didn't exist.
It's so strange.
That's nothingness. When you think about it, that is nothingness.
Yeah.
Like,
but again, that's
happened.
the past.
Yeah.
No presence there.
Yeah, but that nothingness is pervasive, right? Like, that nothingness exists somewhere, right? Like,
yeah.
But there's
that's such a strange concept.
When you think about it,
that's so weird.
Yeah.
Because I've learned a lot about history in the world and economics and what's happened with like different countries and systems and all of that stuff. But I've never thought.
Think about your parents' lives as well. Like they were alive before you. And what were you? Just nothing.
Literally, yeah. Didn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, so I was encoded in their DNA or something.
Yeah.
But not on a sentient conscious level.
Yeah. So it makes you think like. That gives you at least some perspective on consciousness and what it is to exist, right? That's surely.
This is why I love this conversation. Actually, this is what I think about humans. This is my base level analysis, and it can be changed as time goes on, as we evolve these conversations and explore these ideas. On a base level, I actually think that we don't have a choice who we are or what's happened. Like, on a base level, we are products. Everything around us is happening at a rate and a pace that we can never comprehend or understand. And yet, we still have the autonomy in order to alter and cater to our best self.
Exactly.
It's like, it's again another duality. Like, you can't go back. The past has happened, but the future
doesn't exist.
The future, neither of them exist.
Yeah.
But the future can be anything.
Here's another concept about time.
Unlimited.
Which I find fascinating, and when you listeners, if you imagine this, you'll have another meltdown of. If you think about the past, everything that has happened is happening right now, because the past is quite literally only memories, but these memories are only being conjured up in our present minds.
Yeah.
So like the past doesn't exist.
That's
like
some deep shit.
The only the only time. So say like let's take an event like, you know, sort of like World War II or something. The only time World War II exists is when present people in this exact moment think about World War II. It doesn't, like, if the past is happening right now, because it's not there anymore. You could go back in time, but nobody would be there anymore.
Yeah.
Like the past literally is happening now.
It's like we're children in this game where we dress up and go to work and like go to remember these events, and rightfully so, and we're just pretending. We're pretending that everything exists, but there's a reason for that, and this is why we are the apex civilization and species, because we can abstract things that aren't real and remember and like realize them.
Yeah.
I think we also have to acknowledge that fundamentally we aren't, you know, we're no different to anything else on the earth. Like we're just another mammal.
There's also I mean, getting into a conspiratorial realm, but
Go on.
I believe
conspiracy theories.
Yeah, but I believe that, you know, the people in charge, or whoever's guiding the sort of narrative of this world, they know this and they want to do their best to keep us out of the present moment at all costs. And I think people are living less presently and less consciously now than they must have ever have done, because we constantly have distractions. We constantly have an interface with the entire world in our pocket. We have constant fears about the future and constant anxieties about the past and constant depressions, and I think it serves to sort of de-enlighten the human race if you bring them out of the present moment.
It's almost as if 24/7 every hour of the day you're shouting to a crowd of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah.
And that's always going to foster
Exhaustion, mental and spiritual exhaustion.
Yeah, and I think also corruption, because people need to feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
And when you psychologically abuse and manipulate and take advantage of weak psychological
and
weaknesses,
expose people as well, right? You expose people to this level of like fear, basically, like.
Because it's the fear that you expose them to, of like fear of missing out, fear of not being involved, fear of
the past, fear of not you know, of being left behind.
Yeah, not being fit enough, not being strong enough, not being like loving enough. All these things, and then because that gives them like a profit incentive. You know.
Yeah.
It's all it can all be traced down to money at the end of the day, because that's how we value things. But
yeah, it's basically, when you think about business, think about money. A brilliant way to look at money is basically, you know, we have this sort of delusion nowadays where people say, oh yeah, I'm going to go and make some money. You don't make money. Only the banks print money and create currency.
Yeah.
All you do is take money off other people. That's what business and that's what economics is.
Yeah.
Right? So it's how do you trick people into giving you their money? Every bit of money you get, you take off someone else, right?
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad thing.
It's not.
Like,
it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a delusion of this sort of brainwashing instead of let's make money.
Yeah.
Has conditioned people, you know, like sort of wage slavery, and people, you know, sort of like go to work and they think like, oh, you know, I'll just you know, get this allowance and get this sort of like these tokens and this sort of fiat currency.
Yeah.
And I'll be given this. But you don't realise these sharks, the businessmen, the sharks are the ones preying on the fish, right? They're the ones who understand this, and they work out how to take your money.
Yeah.
You take some money from a business, but who cares? They've got plenty. They'll give you your allowance, your wage.
Yeah.
And you've got to realise that there's people everywhere conspiring on how best to take that all off you.
Yeah.
And they've done a very good job of it.
Because we amazing job.
Because we live in sort of perpetual poverty, like you know, perpetual debt, and it's quite bizarre actually. Like.
It's so strange. There's so many things I want to say, so I'll take a bit of time to go through them. But I guess the fundamental question is, how do you create a system? In whatever system you have, you need a finite number of resources, and that's the nature of life. Because if you have unlimited, then nothing's worth anything, and you have no way of transacting with each other and pegging value to anything. So the question is, how do you enable a system where people take money for the value that they provide in a way that is the most proportional to the good that you do for society, and the things that you provide in order to make life worth living more and make life better, basically. And I think that the best way we found that so far is capitalism, without a doubt. I think if you look back at history, there's been no more successful system in bringing people out of poverty and bringing them up the economic ladder and helping them develop and have like comfort and these sort of things, so they can focus on intellectual
self-actualization.
Yeah.
No, I'm a fan of feudalism myself, but
Why?
No, I'm not.
I was thinking that's a dangerous idea, but I'm always open to hear about new ideas. And the second thing I wanted to say with that is it's central banking. So you were talking about how to manipulate the system. You can basically suck all the value out of something without actually furthering like humanity or providing a better quality of life for everyone.
I mean, it's exactly what the central banks
That is exactly what's happening.
It's literally they're like they're just skimming the cream off the milk right now. They're just taking it all straight off the top, like. Yeah,
and they don't do anything for anyone.
Yeah, and you look at any of the best business models nowadays are. So a good example would be like Uber Eats or like Deliveroo. These guys take like 50% of the sort of revenue that these like restaurants and stuff get paid by the customer, and all they do is hire an independent driver to go somewhere, pick something up, and deliver it to somebody through their app. They don't have any stock. They don't have any like liability. They don't have any drivers. Sort of like. Sort of fully employed. Like they have. I mean, they have a contract, but it's so that business model. They've basically found a way to exploit humans' laziness and humans' willingness to pay for convenience. Right. So they've just taken. They're just making far more money than any takeaway restaurant will make on their own, and they're providing a service, but they're not. Their effort and involvement is so minimal, and that's like the best. That's the most clever business models, right? You're skimming all the value for the minimal involvement.
Yeah. It's like mitigating your downside, but you've got unlimited upside, really.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually, if you don't have anything, then you can't lose. Because
exactly.
This is such a weird thing. Digitalization is so strange. I think it's like we won't even realize what we've done for hundreds of years. It's such a strange concept. The fact that you can like digitalize anything and just like broadcast it to the entire world. You can like FaceTime people from across the world right now with a device in your pocket with this sort of Babylon interface that we all carry around day in, day out, and you can literally like call up and communicate with human beings on the other side of the planet. That is beyond bizarre. Like that is so, and it's so mind-boggling, and it's almost. Obviously, our worldview, mine's particular, is quite pessimistic about this and views, the world, these things as a detriment to the human consciousness. But it's actually such an incredible feat
that this human organism, this human being, is able to like adapt and tolerate this level of artificial interference. You know, like the fact that we grew up nowadays and we just have a phone and we just think that's normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually insane.
It's incredible.
And it's happened quickly as well in the past, like, 100 years. Like,
yeah.
People have now just, like, you know, adapted, and, like, humans are so adaptive, it's incredible. Like,
the difference between us and every other animal and species is technology. Started with the wheel, basic things like that.
Yeah.
And then it evolved.
Do you think there's a divine element there? I think so.
I think, I don't know, this is just a thought I had. I think that perhaps we think of it as a divine element because we are the creators, and therefore...
This links back to what you said before, though. You were saying about what makes us different to other animals is the sort of we can abstract concepts, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So and then you'll get sort of like pure evolutionary sort of science guys saying humans had sort of opposable thumb, and then we just, you know, learned to do this and that, and that's, you know, eventually we became, well, I mean, originally we started off with some bacteria on a meteorite and then became a human. But like, if we're looking at a pure evolutionary perspective, what gave us this ability to, you know, to have this higher level of consciousness? When did that develop? What do you think did that? Because obviously there's like the Terence McKenna stoned ape theory that psychedelic mushrooms did this, and there's always other theories. I'd like to hear your perspective. Like,
we don't know.
We don't know. But give me your best guess. Come on, we're spitballing here. Look.
So there's a couple of things. Animals, on the base level, fundamentally want to reproduce. So there's a few things that you need, every animal needs, right? They need like rest, food, play, socialization. Sexual reproduction is the end goal, essentially. And then you die and all that stuff. I think that intense socialization and intense, rigid social structures could have developed more complex thought processes, because as humans are intensely social animals, right? Very social. Like you if you're a human and you spend a week on your own, you get depressed.
Absolutely, we're nothing without other people.
Yeah, and I think that ability to learn from others and transfer information that's the cognitive revolution on a multi-million year scale. And obviously that started probably even way earlier than that, like apes and all that sort of stuff. But I think that's really what differentiates us. And then when you bring something like tools into the mix, I mean, there are plenty of animals in the wild that use tools, but they never made it past that level of sophistication, like where it's like a complex task. For example, like chimpanzees and orangutans can do certain things. I think there's an orangutan. Have you seen that video of that orangutan that like plays a violin, or what is it? What's that thing? A bass? Cello. Plays a cello. Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. But I think the reason that we move past that is because of like intense socialization.
I like that.
Because it, like, now that I think about this, all the animals that I know that use tools are very solitary, other than apes. So I think it's probably the combination of the two. And I don't really understand I understand the mushroom theory, because obviously it's a psychoactive substance like psilocybin and all these different things. You know more about that stuff than I do, and all different variants. But that's an interesting idea. It might have accelerated it. Yeah,
the thing there I always think is in places like, sort of the UK and like Wales and stuff, like mushrooms grow a lot in the autumn because of the damp weather, and it grows the common thing is like in cow pats, like in cow dung, basically, because that's like a fertilizer. And if there's a certain interesting statistic where like loads of cows are basically on psilocybin all the time, so they eat mushrooms.
Right.
So I always wonder, why don't cows evolve? You know.
Well, seriously, how long have they been doing that for? Like how many?
Well, you never know, do you? Like
how long have cows been around?
Well,
let's look it up.
I mean, cows is in the breeds that we have, not very long, but in terms of like a bison or an ox or a sort of original breed,
that's true.
Quite a long time.
How
a buffalo and a bison are like the most. They're like genetically the same as they were 3,000 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, buffalo is like sort of water buffalo.
How long?
But then like a Jersey cow, mate, that's not really.
Yeah,
it's been bred quite
It's
recently.
not quite a bison. I mean, they'd be quite fucked if it was like the Ice Age. Could you imagine like a cow trying to survive?
I've been to a bison farm in this country. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's huge, big, powerful creatures. You don't realise how intimidating they are until you get near them. Like.
There's one in the UK.
Yeah, bush farm. Take you there one day.
Was it nearby?
It's near Bournemouth, in Hampshire, so it'd be like an hour's drive from here.
Yeah. Oh,
less.
Yeah, they do some bison riding. So, all cattle are descended from as few as 80 animals that were domesticated from wild ox in the Near East some 10,500 years ago. Yeah. And that's University College London.
So basically, they haven't developed higher consciousness as a result of eating psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah, that's true.
The theory that I enjoy here is basically the idea that we'll get into like, I mean, nutrition and diet is such an interesting topic as well, but the idea that humans are sort of omnivorous or even obligate carnivores. This is the idea that basically like monkeys and apes are mostly herbivorous. Like they are omnivorous, but their diet is mostly like plant-based. So the idea here is that humans evolved past that level because we developed the use of tools and like intelligence. So then humans could. Well, an important distinction here is humans are the only animal, apart from like a monkey, that can throw. But humans can throw accurately, right, with power. Monkeys can sling shit at each other, but they can't like throw. So a cool theory here is that humans basically were apes that learned to throw and used cooperation, teamwork, communication to throw rocks at animals and kill them, and then use tools such as like rocks and stuff to crack the skulls and eat brains and eat sort of like and develop like basically a meat-based diet, which then caused like exponential growth, which distinguishes us from apes, right? Because that's it. When you look at the difference between apes and humans, the main difference. No, but one of the major differences is digestive system, right?
I don't know about this.
Well, it is. So apes have a typical more herbivore sort of digestive system, like a very long intestine. Yeah. Whereas humans. So this is completely off the top of my head, but like a dog or a cat, which are obligate carnivores, their digestive tract in relation to their body is like 4 times longer. So that if you stretched their digestive system out, it'd be like 4 times the length of their body. But humans is like 3 times longer than our body or something. So it proves that our intestines are actually remarkably short in comparison to that like a gorilla or something. When you see these apes and like orangutans have these huge bulbous bellies.
Why is that?
Well, because that's designed for digesting plants, right? So the idea that I'm saying here is humans evolved to eat meat and be obligate carnivores, which increased our cognitive development, but then also like shrunk down our digestive system.
What's the basis for that? Like, what evidence is there to suggest that a shorter digestive system means that you're...
Well, it's a study of any animal, right? So you look at dogs descend from wolves, cats descend from big cats. They're obligate carnivores. Their natural diet is meat, right? You get some deranged vegans nowadays will try and feed their cats sort of like kibble and soy, but they are literally, like, if you observe reality, they are literally carnivores, right?
That's true.
So if you observe their digestive system in relation to their body, and then you observe a sort of herbivorous animal in relation to their body, humans correlate more with a carnivorous being, right? So that's the point I was making there.
Interesting. I never thought of it that way before. I'm interested to see what's the animal with the longest digestive tract.
Surely like a whale or something, right? Like, or an elephant probably.
With the longest digestive tract. How are we doing for time?
An hour? Jesus Christ. Okay, we've got to wrap this up in 5 minutes then.
It's a close contest between the sperm whale and the blue whale.
There you go. So whales
Yeah,
my first
yeah.
set. First
For
one.
most whales and dolphin species, the length of their intestines works out as their body length. Their body length point. I don't understand what this is
See,
saying.
this is interesting. This further supports my point, right? So on a
more than 150 meters for a
yeah,
sperm whale.
this backs up my point even further though.
Yeah.
Because obviously a whale has the largest digestive system in relation to its body because it's the largest being, right?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
largest animal.
Yeah.
But it's only 0.76 times of it times its body length. Right?
I don't know if that's correct, because it
Body-
says,
yeah, body
but it
length.
says times 17.02 afterwards, after the parentheses. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but
But
let's just
I
disregard that.
assume that means that its intestine tract isn't that much longer than it's like that many times longer than its body, right? Whereas like a elephant, for example's digestive system would be much longer in relation to its body because it's a herbivorous being, and they need a longer digestive system to digest fibre. Like if you want any more proof of this, humans, fibre is part of a balanced diet today, because fibre acts as roughage, right? And it is indigestible. That's the point. You can't digest fibre. And what is fibre? It's plant matter. We can't digest it.
Yeah.
That's the point. Like cows, you look at like a bull or a cow, these are heavily muscled, very large, strong beings. And what do they eat? They eat grass all day because they digest indigestible fibre, and they take that very, indigestible product to a human and digest it into all the essential vitamins and minerals and amino acids that they need to support their function. If you were to only eat indigestible fibre and sort of like grass and stuff, you'd soon die,
Yeah. Do you think that's an element of because I know I just had this thought that was kind of more like, do you think that's because like we are just meat and bones and that sort of thing, but then that logic could be extended to like herbivores as well?
Yeah, but herbivores, there's a distinction here again to be made between ruminants and herbivores, right? So a ruminant animal is something like a cow.
Yeah.
And a ruminant animal means that a ruminant animal has like multiple stomachs. So a cow has 4 stomachs. So its digestive system looks a lot different to that of a human. It has 4 stomachs. So it ingests grass, and it basically like digests it through 4 times through 4 different stomachs to like break it down even further. But the thing is here, another important distinction is, right, so human beings and obligate carnivores have bacteria and a microbiome within their intestines, but a cow has a microbiome within its stomachs. And what happens is it ingests food like grass, it's then digested and by bacteria, and the bacteria then like grows and multiplies, and then a portion of that bacteria is then sucked through into the intestines, and then the cow digests the bacteria, and it's actually getting its amino acids from bacteria which lives inside it off the grass.
That's interesting.
And that's why cows, you have this sort of new age idea of like cow farts are destroying the planet and like global warming and methane. The reason for that is the massive amount of bacterial activity which is happening within their gut, and that like energy is basically expelled in methane gas, because all that bacteria and that growth and that life inside them is creating so much gas.
How many other animals have a system like that?
Or ruminants, so like sheep do.
Yeah.
Pigs don't, because pigs are omnivorous animals. I don't know, any sort of like four-legged. I don't know if elephants do, to be honest. It's four-legged herbivorous creatures, ruminant animals.
Yeah.
We're going to have to Google a list of ruminants. But
Yeah. I mean, we could end it here. Or we
yeah,
can
should we wrap it up?
Yeah. It's pretty late now, isn't it? It's like 9:30.
That has been a total and utter ramble.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think this establishes somewhere to go from here.
Yeah, definitely.
We can structure things around this. And
Definitely.
I think there's some value to be had from this.
Yeah, 100%. It's just
Yeah.
an exploration of ideas in a new place, learning new things. I think we need to make sure we bring in different points of view, different people.
Structured topics, yeah. Like home.
Yeah.
We don't want us to turn into a
Echo chamber.
sword sharpening contest.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
just
Exactly.
sharpen each other's swords. Right?
Exactly. And just kind of pat each other on the back
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, oh yeah.
Yeah, so we'll
our
do a
best.
couple more of these, and then we'll bring in some guests and see what they have to say.
Yeah. We have some friends that I think we're going to bring in as well, and we could talk about general things. I'd also like to talk to some interesting people. Like I know quite a few interesting people that we could interview.
We need to bring in people who are like completely different to us. Just
Yeah,
like random
yeah,
people
I agree.
From around university.
I
or something,
agree, yeah.
and a bit like,
Yeah. We need to do that, and we need to have a conversation with them, and we need to try to understand where they come from.
give their point of view as a platform, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing, like, 'cause I wanna.
Yeah. Alrighty. This has been your boys, James and Jonny. James, thanks for coming along and
Thank you.
being here. And we shall thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.